episode 86 of Below the Belt, joined by Flav, and just about to record, and then I've had to take the running order and throw it up in the air because we are also joined by Scott Hamilton of Matchroom Sports. How are you, sir?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm not going to lie, slightly tired. It's been a long week, to be fair. Long week, long fight day, and then obviously you stayed up for the Brook fight as well. So sort of running off maybe an hour and a half sleep. But it's all good, mate. Yeah, all good.
Tell us about that. What that's like being in the fight camp, being in the bubble. How long have you been in the bubble this time around?
To be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you. It just feels like it's all rolled into one since August. I mean, we obviously done fight camp sort of July, August, which was a HQ. In a lovely Holiday Inn in Brentwood. This time around, slightly more upgraded in the Hilton Hotel in Wembley. So that was the second show of our residency following the Usyk Chisora. So I was in for 6 nights, I think it was, and now stand through to the bitter end for our show next week, which is headlined by Conor Benn. So yeah, it's a long stint, this one, sort of 2 weeks, but you know it is what it is. It's a job to me, so it needs must.
Absolutely, it really is strange times, Scott. And obviously, you coming off the Katie Taylor show last night. Pretty good show overall.
Yeah, I think we were pleased. I've literally just been talking to Eddie on WhatsApp. The viewing figures, in particular, on social, I think we're looking at just over 1.5 million views on Sky Sports Facebook and which is a testament to, I think, Katie's draw, and also the adaptation of the way of the world. Things are going in a more digital sort of frame of mind, so it's interesting.
Sorry, Scott. It also shows you just how interested people are in the sport. Like, I understand the importance of pay-per-views and how it essentially funds. It's the engine room of boxing. Certainly now that there's no live crowds, but it just shows you whenever there is free boxing, even if these aren't household names. I know Katie Taylor's getting that way, but my dad, who isn't a massive boxing fan, probably won't know who Katie Taylor is, but will watch free boxing online. It just shows you the appetite for the sport. And often, I think people are too quick to say, oh, well, boxing's like secondary to other sports, or boxing's dying. You hear it all the time. And obviously, since Matchroom came in, it really has exploded again. But there seems to be a flavour in the public for boxing, generally.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I think in last night in particular, Katie is a huge draw across, England, Ireland. We was quite lucky in a way yesterday. There wasn't any other sort of rivaled sporting events apart from maybe the golf. There was no Premier League sort of crossover, which can have a knock-on effect to viewing figures and whatnot. But yeah, you're right. There's certainly an appetite for sport, and when it's sort of free and in your face, then you're gonna sort of take note and watch. And the card on paper was a historic night, and I think it showed. So yeah, we seem to be pleased.
So was the entire card on social media as well? Was that on Facebook and YouTube and all of that? Was the entire card?
Yeah, so Sky streamed it
right
from the first fight. So I think that's possibly the first time they've done it since I've been involved. They usually sort of lead with 1 or 2 fights on Facebook as a little teaser into the main stuff on TV. But yeah, they made a decision sort of midweek to sort of hit far and wide. Like you say, there was it's a huge audience out there across their social platforms, and seems to have done well.
When I saw that you was going to do a show with 3 female fights at the top of the card, I'll be honest, I was a little bit concerned about that, and I think I perhaps underestimated Katie Taylor's draw. I thought all 3 female fights. Not sure this will do great. Was there any kind of trepidation on your side, on Matchroom's side, for putting together a female-led card?
You know what? It's interesting. So I think the initial plan, to be honest, was to do a full female card. And it was actually Katie Taylor who sort of knocked back a little bit and said, this is not what we're trying to do. I can, she could sort of see the idea, but at the same time, it's just boxing. So I think, we sort of took a step back and went back to the drawing board and decided to sort of mix the two. But yeah, that was our initial plan, was to do a full female card, and she was the one who was quite hands-on and, pushed back a little bit to say, no, it's boxing. We want to showcase everyone and anyone. So that was the initial plan, and fair play to her for sort of sticking to her guns and getting her point across.
Amazing how far it's come, though, isn't it? Like, the women's boxing in such a short amount of time, because and Eddie Hearn gets a lot of stick, and Matchroom gets stick, and it's just basically because of Eddie Hearn's character, I guess. But that he's done, and Sky Sports across the board actually done quite a lot to make their channels and the broadcasts and their events they put on as inclusive as possible. And it got to a point where, while I didn't think that the card would do as well as you said, I didn't flinch when I saw it. I would never flinch at a women's boxing match. But you know what I mean? It was I've never seen that before, essentially, and to get those kind of numbers is a fantastic thing. And you know, these boxers are building narratives for themselves, and it's a fantastic thing to see, because when I'm watching Katie Taylor, I don't see a female boxer. I just see an incredibly technically brilliant fighter putting a show on. Really, I loved her 2 fights, and I always forget the woman's name. Help me, Cal.
Delphine Pastou.
Yeah, those fights were incredible. They were fantastic. And again, it's not about what she said about like pushing back and saying this shouldn't be an all-female bill. It should just be a boxing bill. I think she's spot on.
Yeah,
I would still. Oh, sorry, go on, Scott.
No, I was going to sort of touch on that and sort of say, you know, just Katie herself. It sort of had a little moment actually yesterday where, you know, I'm quite privy to be in these situations and whatnot, and you'll see a picture that Katie's posted on her social media accounts this morning. Which, lucky enough, I was the photographer of her team photo, and I just took a step back when I was in there. You know, you don't get to sort of experience that, and it sort of just made me realise how much of a sort of living legend she is. Really, like you say, women's boxing's come on. In particular, really, I guess it has gone hand in hand with Katie Taylor's, you know, rise to the top. You know, she made her debut in the same venue last night. I think it might have been on the same card with George Groves. Could be wrong there, but it certainly was at Wembley Arena sort of 3 or 4 years ago. And in that period, it's certainly catapulted into a whole new world. And it's great for the other girls. And you said guys, and the other girls on the card in, you know, Terry Harper, who's, you know, she's been fangirl in a week, so you know, it allows her to put the platform to push on, and she's obviously gone on to win a world title. So, you know, women's boxing is in a great spot at the minute. And
I wonder what Jane Crouch thinks about this, because she was like the outlier in the first instance, and she had court battles in order to make this position happen. Yeah,
so she was doing some bits with Sky last night. They had like a webcam set up on her in her flat or her house, wherever she was, and she was cheering the girls on. So yeah, you know, she's often quite vocal in her support with, you know, the likes of Terry and stuff, but you know, she's certainly one of the trailblazers to sort of set the path for these ones coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. No risk of Harper and Katie Taylor, is there?
And funny things have happened. It's, you know, I was talking to Katie's management team in the week, and in a way, you know, 1 or 2 of her career legacy defining fights in the last year or 2 have sort of fallen by the wayside through no fault of her own. When you think of it, you know, Cecilia Brackhouse suffered defeat to McCaskill. Serrano, there was, you know, issues out of the ring. So I think they were 2 fights that were certainly on the agenda, but you know, they've sort of gone to the side. So, you know, moving forward, what are the options for Katie? She's quite interested in a crossover fight with, is it Cyborg, who I think that's in Bellator, I think. There is a rematch with McCaskill and Breakhouse. Katie's obviously beat McCaskill before. You know, how far can she go up and down the weights? So, Harper, Taylor, I couldn't see it personally. You know, funny things have happened. Maybe Cameron's more realistic.
Yeah. It just popped into my head this morning because I saw that Ball, Taylor, and Harper took a picture together after the fight with their respective titles, and I imagine you probably took that picture as well, Scott. And it did, and I thought, there's only £5 between them. Why not? But I think you're right. I think the McCaskill fight makes more sense, and you were gracious enough to put a question to her for us, Scott. And I asked we asked Katie about the weight and what kind of weight she thinks she can go to. She said she walks around about 142. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
and so welterweight's a push, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, when she boxed Lynn O'Doherty for the WBO 140, I think after that she relinquished the title almost immediately, and I think it was not maybe a sort of something that she realised at the time maybe it was a push too far, but I think, you know, lightweight seems to be her optimum weight. But you know, for the right fights and the right sort of preparation time, I guess anything's possible, really. But me personally, I wouldn't want to see her go up too much, to be fair, because you know you push it one fight too much, and you know, it could affect your resume.
Yeah, and I think it was almost good in a way that McCaskill beat Breckhouse, because she's naturally a junior welter, So that fight's probably a little bit more makeable, isn't it? You could probably do it at 142, something like that.
Yeah, that's
Possibly.
exactly. Yeah. I think that was the initial plan. So I think those two are going to rematch, and that's certainly an option for Katie, maybe for sort of the back end of 2021. But yeah, we'll see. It's interesting for Katie. I mean, I think one of the questions on that Q&A that you guys chipped in with, what's the drive? You've done everything pretty much. You just go on her Wikipedia and just look at the right-hand side of all the gold medals and whatnot. To have that drive and motivation still when you've pretty much done it all is amazing. Testament to her character and ability to want to create more defining nights for herself. I would say she's a living legend, to be fair.
Eddie started calling her. He started referring to her as kind of like the greatest, and he's correct me if I'm wrong. He's throwing in her amateur record when he speaks about that, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean,
which is fair.
Yeah, you can't overlook the accolades she racked up. We had Katie's mum on the preview show we do with Darren Barker and Chris Lloyd yesterday, and you look how much she had to sacrifice. Katie had to sacrifice growing up. Boxing is her life, so she's brilliant.
She's also about to overcome that kind of split with her dad as well, where it must have been a massive thing. And you saw a dip in her performance after that she was adjusting to her new trainers and not having that physical relationship with her father in the corner as a trainer, but as a dad, and the outside issues that have been caused by him leaving the family. That must have been huge, and for her to overcome that is a special thing in itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the film, but it's sort of covered in that. And
yeah,
like you say, she did go through a dark time, and to come through it shows a real gut check, and a character sort of shine through. So yeah, she moved over to America and linked up with Ross NMA, who's a trainer, and cracked on really. So yeah, that in itself, after spending so long under her father's sort of guidance as a trainer, it's an interesting story, and then shows really how good she is, I guess, to be able to adapt and push on, and then win more and more. So
I was also thinking as well, you were saying about motivation there, Scott. It must be because I think it's fair to say that the kind of the gap between the elite fighters like Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields and Breckhouse and McCaskill and the elite champions right now, the gap between them and their challengers, pretty big. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think it was probably a little bit evident last night as well, to be fair. I mean, no disrespect to Miriam Gutierrez. She was an unbeaten mandatory challenger. I think that got overlooked a little bit. She won the right to fight Katie. Katie had to defend against Miriam Gutierrez, or she probably would have been stripped to one of the belts. But yeah, I think it was quite evident, even within the first 30 seconds, to be fair. The golfing class was there to be seen. But, I guess in a way, that's not any fault of Katie. She just had to contest with who was in front of her. And then fingers crossed, we've got this mandatory out the way. I'm not sure what the obligations are for the other governing bodies, but, I would imagine, knowing Katie, she just wants to be in the biggest fights possible and test herself.
That definitely wasn't her fault. Of course it's not. This is just about depth in the sport. And, female boxing is relatively fledgling if you compare it to the men's side of the sport. And it's only a matter of time with this increased exposure that the number of female boxers that enter the sport and turn pro will increase. The level of boxer will increase, and that's how you get to where we need to be in the like I said, the women's side of the sport. So it's definitely not her fault. She has to. If this woman managed to get to a position where she was mandatory, and obviously Katie has to fight her, then that just shows you the potential lack of quality at this moment. But it's only going to get better, and there are big fights out there and much bigger challenges. But she has to defend a mandatory, and it's not up to her who's in that mandatory spot. So no issue really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Katie said last night about, I think she's very aware about the next generation. She said in a post-fight interview about the next generation. And I think she's very aware of what she does now is almost, it's for her, but it's for the next generation as well, because I think the next generation of fighters are going to benefit from the exposure she gets. Do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we won't be able to see that sort of next crop come through for maybe a couple of years. But I was privy to watching some sparring in the last couple of weeks with Terry Harper and a couple of girls on the Team GB sort of setup. So I think the foundations have certainly been laid off the back of Katie's success, and the next generation over the next couple of years, you will start to see more and more names crop up, new names as well. It's not just going to be one or two. I think you're going to see a real crop come through, which I guess in a way is sort of the first sort of crop to sort of be inspired by Katie and whatnot. We've seen Terry obviously win world titles, and Chantel as well, and Savannah Marshall as well. So that sort of Olympic crop has sort of come good. But I think people just watching on TV will take up the sport, not necessarily with a decorated amateur background, and get involved. So yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years to see sort of next generation come through.
So talking of Savannah Marshall, I saw in the news that Claressa Shields is getting a little bit pissed off with not being able to get a fight. Can you tell us anything? Has there been offer been made? Anything around making Savannah Marshall with Claressa Shields?
I don't know if any offer has been made officially, but we've worked with Claressa before. She's boxed on a couple of our Matchroom USA shows. I think Eddie's got a decent enough relationship with her promoter and manager. It seems for me to be the natural fight to make. Really, it's the one blemish on Claressa's otherwise perfect record, amateur and pro. Like you say, she's struggling for a fight. Why not do it? Why not? We could set a date now and build towards it. The promotional side of it could be quite fun. Whether or not you allow them, a fight in the interim and then get it on, but it definitely seems to be a collision course. I'm sure we'll see that next year.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to make it. Like you said, Shields is struggling to get a fight. Savannah Marshall, she signed with Mayweather, didn't she? And that didn't go well at all. And she seems her career's kind of been stop-start as a pro, isn't it? And it's good that she's won a world title. Super pleased for her. But hopefully now she can kick on and get the fight her talent deserves.
Yeah, I think linking up with Peter Fury has been a very shrewd move. They seem to have a really good understanding. Like you say, she's won the belt now. So I don't think there's any holding back, to be fair. It sort of comes back to what we were saying before, the sort of gap in between maybe having a voluntary defence against, no disrespect to, a substandard opponent. What is the point really? Let's crack on. Let's have these unifications and see who's the best.
One thing I wanted to ask you, we've seen Katie Taylor box twice, and we've not seen, we're seeing Conor Benn next week, which I know you're staying in the bubble for another week to help with that. We've not seen Josh Kelly at all. How hard has it been to get everybody fights in this kind of period, this COVID period?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. And the two guys you mentioned there sort of have different stories maybe to why they haven't been out yet. So it almost is sort of case by case.
Right.
Josh Kelly in particular, he had the issue with Avanesian where, he sort of pulled out the fight originally, which was on a Kell Brook undercard, I think, in Sheffield on the day of the fight. We then rescheduled the fight for earlier this year, and I think that was actually the first show we had to can at the back end of March. I think the plan was always to have that as a headliner, to be fair. Josh Kelly then had a second child, which sort of delayed things. I think Avanesian in training camp, I think, may have suffered a slight injury, but that fight is very much on. I think you'll see that probably at maybe the first or second show of 2021. So yeah, a couple of things maybe delayed that. I think Conor Benn was sort of just hoping that crowds would be back. To be fair, he thrives off the big nights, and the crowd really do get behind Conor. He's building a good little fan base for himself. I think he gets that extra percentage from the natural energy in the crowd. So I think he was sort of hanging off, thinking there'll be crowds back. And to be fair, he's probably just looked at the situation to think, what, this is not going to change. So let's just get in there and get paid, to be fair. So that's the reason on them two guys. And, you look further afield to people like Josh Warrington and Callum Smith, who are sort of higher up the food chain. And I guess, the no fans sort of angle is a hindrance to, income on the gate. So, yeah, almost each fighter will have a reason maybe for not being out or for being out more. It very much is case by case.
This guy he's fighting, Sebastian Formella, he's no mug.
No, he's not a mug, and I think it's I think you got to say fair play to Conor. I think Formella went the distance with Sean Porter recently. it's fair to say Conor hasn't been in with anyone of that sort of caliber whatsoever. Conor has shown flaws before. He got dropped a couple of times against that Payno guy. I think it's well documented. He's come from a very, very, very limited amateur background, mainly fighting in like garden sheds in Australia, to being top of the show on Sky Sports, and we've almost seen him learn on the job. Really, you think he made his debut? What was it, on a Joshua undercard? I think he might have even been chief support that time, to come out as a novice 21-year-old and just swinging away. You've seen him sort of develop over the last couple of years, and he's still a very young man. What a lovely guy he is, honestly. I first met him, and I think maybe 2 or 3 fights into his pro career, maybe the glitz and glamour and seeing his name in lights maybe just got to him a little bit. I guess it would be quite hard as a young man to sort of take it all in, but he certainly changed his mindset and approach over the years. And by all accounts in the gym, he's learning every day and improving. So we'll see come next Saturday. It's his first real step up. We'll see how he's been getting on behind closed doors, and if he can, put Formella away. I think that's a statement, to be fair, and it sets him up for big fights next year.
If you manage to put him away, then it really does. I can't. My prediction is that I think it will come on top for him, and he'll get beat. But I hope he doesn't, because I really like him. I like his story, and his dad talk. I listened to an interview he did with Tris Dixon, his old man, and he was talking about how impressed he was with Conor Benn, and I know he's going to boost him up and he's going to help promote his career. But you're saying he's really, really impressed, and he just keeps learning. My issue though, right, is that there's a couple of times Conor Benn beforehand says, I'm going to stick to my boxing, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then he gets in there and it seems to all go out the window. He just and then the next time he goes, I know what I did last time, I've learned from it, gets into the ring, and it's the same story every time, and it just shows I don't know, I guess it shows he is learning, and he doesn't necessarily know it all. Don't get me wrong, he knows more than I could ever possibly hope to remember, but he's exciting because the unknown is always there for him. But if he does, and it's been a long time out of the ring, was it February he was in?
Yeah.
So it's been a long time out, really, given the fact that he was so active, that maybe he has, over these last 7 or 8 months, he's really kind of, we'll see another new invention of Conor Benn, and because it's only a good thing for British boxing if he comes through this fight and actually gets to move up. But what I know, we shouldn't never look past the next fight, but how quickly do you move him up, given the fact that he is still learning, and his record looks great on paper, he's knocking people out, but how long do you coast him for? And when, I guess that's the task of Eddie Hearn and the rest of the matchroom, to figure out how well you pace him. But this is a step up. We'll know a lot more about Conor Benn after this fight, for sure.
Yeah, it is a big step up, and personally, I probably wouldn't move him that quickly, to be honest with you.
No.
Just because of the reasons we just touched on then. But, each to their own. Conor obviously wants and feels it's the right time to make this leap. And, it is interesting. If you do come through next week, it sort of is, let's maybe take a step back and just assess and go from there. I think he was mandatory to fight for the British title, which unfortunately won't be happening next. I don't know if that's an option, but yeah, it is a bit of a tough one with Conor, I guess. If you take that step too far, you may get beat. But at the same time, losing your unbeaten record is not the end of the world. So
no.
Either way, Conor's always going to be an exciting fight. So like you say, he does have that raw sort of edge to him, and he does see red quite easily, and he just likes to trade up, to be fair. I think he actually really enjoys that side of it. So, interesting. I'd personally hold him back and maybe navigate him through next year, sort of 3 or 4 fights, maybe a similar sort of level to Formella, and then really chuck him in after that. I think that sort of interim sort of stage can be overlooked, and fighters sort of go past the European-y sort of type level and get found out. So I think we will find out a hell of a lot about Conor Benn next week.
Scott, just sorry quickly, Kell. If Eddie Hearn decides to push him on, you're going to have a word. You're going to go up to him and go, like, you're making a mistake here, mate. Listen to me, Eddie. He's not ready.
Well, yeah, you laugh, but that sort of stuff does get spoken about in the office at times. It would get thrown out there. What do you think of this fight or whatever, if it's in the pipeline? And we'll chip in, whether or not any of our input goes goes anywhere, I very much doubt. But I certainly wouldn't be afraid to cast my opinions for sure.
Okay, let us know how it goes.
Will do.
Yeah, do you think there's with Conor Benn, what you guys were just saying about, sometimes he kind of just abandons his boxing? Do you think there's a case of, because this makes me think of Chris Eubank against Spike O'Sullivan, when Eubank tried to jab and tried to box, and he was actually getting caught quite a bit against Spike. And when Eubank just embraced who he is, he walked through Spike O'Sullivan in the end. Do you think there's a case of that with Conor Benn, where he is what he is? He's not going to be a cute boxer. Is it just a case of him being who he is and making the best of it?
Yes and no, really. I do think he has improved, sort of the fundamentals. But I see where you're coming from. I can sort of see an argument for both, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. So there's tell us about, because you were saying before about, everything's kind of go with kind of match. Do you ever get kind of the time to just sit back and kind of take it all in, or is it constantly just fighting fires and on to the next one?
It does feel like that, certainly in the minute. And to be fair, I was speaking to a couple of friends on Thursday. We had a little Zoom call, and it actually just made me think, hang on, fucking hell, we're in a lockdown here. It doesn't feel like working at the minute in boxing. It doesn't feel like there's anything really going on, to be fair. I know it's a bit of a strange thing to sort of say, but we're so heads down, crack on with what we're doing. I think today, more than anything, sort of a Sunday before another fight week after the event that's just gone, I'll probably find a couple of hours maybe just to catch up on the news. I just saw on Twitter Des O'Connor's died, and I was like, fuck, I didn't know that. So I'll have a few hours.
Out of all the things that are happening in this world this week, I'm not sure. I mean, all due respect to Des O'Connor, but you're missing out a lot.
Genuinely couldn't tell you what happened yesterday. Honestly, if there was anything significant happening in the world yesterday, I couldn't tell you. I was that engrossed in our show. I'll have a couple of hours to myself today. Probably about 15 of us in the bubble at the minute, which we'll meet up and watch the England game tonight. And a couple of fighters are already here for next week. So Alan Babich is here, Formella's here for who's fighting Connor. So I'll probably try and catch up with Babich and maybe have a bit of food with him. But yeah, it does feel like it's sort of it just rolls into one. To be fair, we've got a show next week, then a week gap, and then we're in for Billy Joe Saunders and then AJ. So the next month's going to be tough, but it is what it is. I love it.
Absolutely. So next week obviously Conor Benn against Sebastian Formella, and then Fabio Wardley and Richard Lartey. Lartey was out actually not too long ago, right? He boxed Nathan Gorman. Yeah,
he boxed Gorman. Was it a Commonwealth title eliminator? Obviously, sort of maybe more known for that fight with Dubois, where he had that mental trade up early and then got beat. So that's an interesting fight. Fabio in a way sort of comes from a similar sort of background to Conor in terms of his amateur experience. It's maybe like the unlicensed sort of scene. So it's a step up for him. He was hanging up for fighting Lucas Brown, and I think they just couldn't get the what's going on in the world. They just couldn't get it over the line. Sort of the isolation and whatnot, and leaving Australia. I think it was just a stretch too far. But he's up for pushing on. I think he had a good win last time out against Simon Vallily. So that'd be a fun fight. And Babich and Tom Little, I think anything could happen in that. I mean, we saw maybe the flaws of Alan Babich in his last fight. I don't think he can fight like that for too much longer. But Tom Little's, I think he's lost about 3 or 4 stone for this fight. Looks in good nick, so that could be quite fun. And then obviously we have the news today. Unfortunately, Dave Allen won't be on the card. He was scheduled to box, but it's decided to call it a day. So I'm not sure if we're looking at maybe putting on 1 or 2 more. But the card's pretty much set for next week. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about that, about Dave Allen, deciding to call it a day. Because he was supposed to be fighting, wasn't he, not too long ago? He was supposed to be fighting on the Chisora card, and that fell out of bed quite late. Was that kind of like the final straw for him, do you think?
Yes and no, I think it's probably not my place to say, but there's a couple of things with Dave in the background that's been going on, which has made him sort of lead to this decision. But that wouldn't have helped. I mean, he was in the fight bubble due to fight Chris Lovejoy, who was 17-0, 17 knockouts, ranked number 15 with WBA. There's no footage of this guy whatsoever, but by all accounts, he's knocking guys over that are just not fit to really be in a ring. So this guy had a well ranked. It was a great opportunity for Dave to hopefully beat this guy. And then that would have led to a really big fight. He was obviously due to fight Christian Hammer before that. That fell through for COVID. So he's had a bit of bad luck, to be fair. And I think the bad luck mixed with, like I say, that maybe one or two issues outside of the ring, he's just decided now is a good time to get out. And to be fair, I think it is the right decision. I think Eddie's just posted on his Insta to say, when you're feeling cold about fighting, it's a good time to go. So, if there's any hesitation about him fighting next weekend, it's certainly the right decision. And I know he's sort of retired a few times before, but knowing Dave like I do know Dave, I had a really good chat with him in his hotel room the last show at the early hours. We sort of had a bit of a heart to heart. Yeah, I don't think he will box again, to be fair. I think this might be it.
You can only go by what I've heard him, what he said in his interview. He's always been very open, hasn't he? About the things he's challenged with outside, and he mentions the relationship with his sister quite often. I just really hope, I really hope he does stay retired, and obviously those around him ensure that that's the best thing for him, because like you said, I didn't know he was going cold on fighting, but that's kind of dangerous, if you get in the ring without the right mental attitude, then it's such a dangerous sport and an unforgiving sport. If he can walk away now at 28, he'll be fit. It's not like he'd have to fight another, because his style of fighting means that it's pretty unforgiving. If in 7 or 8 years he walks away like most heavyweights do it, in their mid 30s to late 30s, he could take untold damage in that time. You don't know what might happen. He's walking away. He's walking away at 28, and like he said, he owns a couple of houses. He's in a good financial situation. He's done a lot with his talent, and Matchroom have helped him massively as well. They've given him a huge platform, and he's made the most of it because he's entertaining. You want to watch him fight. You want to see him in the run up to fights. He's always interesting to talk to. Very, very interesting in interview, and best of luck to him. It was great.
Yeah, he's a real character. Let's be fair. I think Dave will be the first one to admit. His ability is there to be seen. He was never going to be a world champion. He has carved out the opportunities himself as well, to a certain extent. You mentioned Matchroom have done great for him, but I suppose we wouldn't have been able to have given the opportunities without his flair and charisma. That's sort of carved him out the opportunities. People have really warmed to him down the years, and like you say, the issues that he has been faced with, he's been public with them, and we've almost been on the journey with Dave Allen. I think everyone has been, really. He's been that sort of outgoing about it all. So, yeah, it's been an interesting ride with Dave. I'd certainly class him as one of my closest friends in boxing. I think you could class him as a success story, to be fair. I mean,
for sure.
He is what he is, but headline in the O2 Arena and win. Not many people can say they've done that. So,
Lucas Brown was 28-1, I think, when he beat him.
Exactly, yeah. I think Dave was a bit of an underdog in that. So to put him away, you got to say that's probably his defining night. Great guy.
Yeah, Dave was good enough to give him some of his time down at Darren Barker's gym before I think it was the David Price fight, and he spoke about boxing, of course, but he also spoke about doing Love Island. So I'd love to see him on that. I think that'd be good fun.
There's so many opportunities for him. Like boxing really could just be a springboard for the stuff that he could do afterwards. I think he'd be great on Sky as a pundit. I think he would be great as doing after dinner speaking. Things like anything reality based, he'd be great in. So he's going to earn untold money if he wants to do it. There'll be so many opportunities for him. And like he says, he doesn't want to get punched in the face anymore. And none of us want to get punched in the face. Boxing's a mad sport. And, it's just great that he's come to this realisation he can just crack on now with all kinds of things that he can get on with.
Yeah, he's flirted with the idea before about retiring and sort of throwing it out there. But I think this time, like you mentioned a minute ago, Flav, he's very close with his sister. And for him to publicly say, he spoke with his sister and come to this decision, I think that says to me that's the final straw. Things with Dave, he needs to be active. I think if he's sort of doing nothing for a while, he said we'll probably go a little bit. So I've been speaking to him this morning. I think there's a couple of things he could be doing in boxing. Training's the obvious one. Maybe doing some matchmaking. He's very good with his memory's unbelievable. He's got this mad talent of you could ask him what's the capital of Mongolia or something, and he'll just know it. You can give him this mental calculation, and he can just reel off the answer.
Wow.
His memory is incredible. So I was saying to him, use that to your advantage. Start networking and boxing, maybe get a matchmaker's license, and you could do some matching for a promoter. So yes, plenty of options for him. Like you say, the punditry side seems to be a no-brainer. He's just a nice bloke at the end of the day. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea and whatnot, but
I don't. What do you want? What does someone have to do to be liked? How can he not be someone's cup of tea? Like I could get it with Prince Patel. All right, he's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. But Dave Allen's just affable. He's having a laugh. I think. Do you know what I think? A lot of people, not the negative sentiment that goes towards him is because of Matchroom and because he's been given good positions on bills and a lot of TV time, and it's probably a bit of jealousy. But anybody given the opportunity will do everything they can to maximise it, and that includes working hard, getting ripped as he has been in his career. A couple of times he came in looking great. He's taken advantage of the opportunity. He's used his charisma to create a platform for himself, and he's eked out the very best from his boxing ability. That's the reason why people don't like him. I think it comes from a negative place. I think
what you just said then was for me sort of now in head. He's having a laugh. I think some people look at him and think, he don't sort of take it very seriously. And like you say, he has been ripped for 1 or 2 training camps, and he'll admit himself maybe he didn't train as best as he could have done. So I think that's probably the angle more so. People sort of see that he's given these opportunities, and he sort of takes it maybe a little bit light. He doesn't graft or whatever in training camp, but it's what it is. It worked for him. I think some of his big wins against Nick Webb and whatnot. He literally had like 2 training sessions. So each box is different, and I guess being a heavyweight, obviously he's not having to make weight and whatnot. So it worked for him. So good on him, I guess.
Yep.
Before we want to talk about Crawford Brook, but I could see Dave Allen in that Freddie Flintoff kind of TV presenter role.
Yeah.
I could see him doing something like that, a Top Gear,
League of Their Own, something.
Yeah, one of those silly, because he's obviously a sportsman and an athlete in his own right, but he's also a nice guy and he's got a bit of charisma about him. And as Scott said, he's actually pretty intelligent as well. I could see him on one of those game shows doing something like that. I don't think he should limit himself to boxing. I think he could make something of himself, to go, more than boxing. But let's talk about Crawford and Brook. Scott, you said you stayed up for it last night. With everybody else in the bubble. Thoughts?
Yeah, it was a slog. I'm not going to lie. I was quite tired. I did fall asleep during the Chiefs support, so I was watching it through one eye. I thought Kell done all right for 2 rounds, and I must admit I've not watched it back. So Crawford went southpaw, switch hitting like he does, and I think that took away Kell's jab, to be fair, which I think he was using to his advantage and getting a little bit of success in the early couple of rounds. And I actually remember coming on this podcast in its early form, one of the early episodes, and I said, for me, Crawford is my favourite fighter. He's pound for pound, he's unbelievable. So
you can't do that. We're going to remember you saying that. You can't just come and remember I said this, boys.
I think on the episode, it might have been like episode 7 or something.
Okay, mate, I'm going to hunt it down.
I wasn't surprised at all, to be fair. I think Crawford is unbelievable. And yeah, it's interesting for Kell. I think he's coming out and sort of contemplate retirement himself now. Where does he go? But Crawford is amazing. It'd be interesting to see where he goes next as well, to be fair.
Yeah. Go on, Flav, were you saying something?
It's just the same old, isn't it? Just,
yeah.
He started well, he boxed well, he got slapped. And that
he got caught with a shot, and that was kind of that, really.
And like, there's no shame in it, because like you say, Terence Crawford. Can I just have a quick bugbear about something? What just occurred to me when I was watching it. Yeah. This pound for pound bullshit needs to stop. Every fighter in every division claims to be pound for pound fighter. Oh, he's Bud Crawford, pound for pound. Lomachenko, pound for pound. How many pound for pound? You have one. If we can't decide who's pound for pound, let's just fucking bin it. Anyway, right, Terence Crawford, pound for pound fighter in the world, probably. He was at a level that Kell Brook can't compete with. And then you go back to the previous 2 losses in Golovkin and Errol Spence, where again it was just at a level he just couldn't compete with. He's not at that level. I would say to him, fair play for taking these fights. Like, fair play. You have to. Especially the Golovkin thing, which was... It was never going to happen for you, but it was, you know, you jumped up. I don't know what it was. It's something like, was it 2 divisions he jumped up to fight Golovkin? So every time he's gone up on his level against these super fighters, he's come unstuck. So you know what level he is. And this time, without, you know, his promotional team around him, what he's done previously, and we won't talk about that because it's probably awkward for Scott. But it just, you kind of knew before even watching it. Do you know what I mean? That you knew what was going to happen. That said, he did do well for 2 rounds.
Yeah, he did, and I think with Crawford, I think, you know, you were saying about the pound for pound stuff. ESPN are really pushing that because they have to, because they've got nothing else to really talk about in terms of Terence Crawford, because he's having to fight Kell Brook and I think everybody did that thing where Kell Brook looked great on the scales. He made weight, which, like, first time, no issue.
He looked fantastic.
He looked brilliant, but we do this thing where fight week comes around and we start to second guess ourselves. And you just have to remember how you feel when the fight was announced. I didn't.
No.
I thought Kell Brook was going to get smashed up because he's 34. He's had a lot of hard fights, like you've just described. He's not made welterweight in a long time. He hasn't boxed in a long time.
But sometimes you do think, can he do it?
Like, yeah, that's what fight week does.
Yeah, it's like Chisora when he was going in against Usyk. You just think, God, he is big. Like, and he can can he do it? And I thought, all right, maybe he can do it. This, I thought, no chance. No, there isn't a world where Kell Brook wins his fight. Not one. You could fight him 100 times. Not once would he win.
I was quite interested on the. Someone made a good point during the day yesterday. It was probably the first time in Kell's championship sort of fights where he didn't have to do the IBF second day weigh-in as well, which was quite interesting, with obviously being a WBO title fight. And that sort of played into my mind, thinking, shit, that might go in his advantage. But
so is this what? So they maximise the amount of weight you can put on between weighing in and fighting? Is that right? Or
correct? Yeah. So the IBF adopted a second day weigh-in. So the morning of a fight. It's usually about 9 o'clock in the morning. I think is it £10, Kell? I think it might be. You can't go over £10.
Yeah, £10. Yeah.
And so, and if you are, what happens? The result is a no contest.
It's happened a few times. I think Daniel Jacobs might have done it against Triple G, where he basically just fucked it off.
Would you get fined?
Yeah, you get fined, and obviously that sanction gets withdrawn. So, worst case scenario, I guess it would have been a non-title fight, or in extreme circumstances, I guess maybe the fight could get scrapped. I think it might have happened with Kevin Mitchell as well at Wembley Stadium on one of the shows. He fluffed the weight and ended up boxing, which was a final eliminator, just become sort of a 12 round contest.
Can I ask a question, Cal? Sorry to jump in your shoes for a sec, but
that's fine.
Now that he's been beaten, Amir Khan has nothing to do. Could you see Eddie? Whoa! Could Eddie Hearn find a way of promoting that fight? Do you think? Is there any world, or is it too difficult? The relationship too difficult now?
Yeah, I think even before what's sort of happened in recent weeks, I think that ship is completely sailed now. To be fair,
okay.
I dread to think the man hours that's been put in trying to make that fight in the last couple of years, but. Is it relevant anymore? I see what you're saying.
No, of course not. Of course. Well, look, it's relevant in so much as
you know what. I'll probably still watch it. I probably would still watch it.
I'd watch it for sure. I'd watch it, and I'm not 100% sure what the result would be. I think Kell Brook would do him, but that, whatever. But the fact is that with Matchroom as a promotional force, and them two reviving that hatred they have, or seemingly hatred of they have each other. You could definitely build a pay-per-view around that, 100%. But obviously, I think there's more. Probably, if I could choose, there are other fights I'd rather watch. And you kind of feel like you've been stung as boxing fans, and I guess as people that are working in the sport, you've been stung by that not happening for so long. It's almost like, fuck you, you've had your chance. What I would say, or ask this question is, would Kell Brook and Amir Khan have made Kell Brook more money than those 3 big title fights he had?
Good question.
Like if they'd have fought when they were both in their peak.
I mean, to be fair to Brook, I guess you look at his last couple of fights. Yeah, he would have been handsomely paid last night. Golovkin, he would have got well paid. So
maybe not.
Yeah, it's a tough one, really. I guess it depends when the fight would have happened. You know, if Brook and Khan would have happened last year, probably not. But
no, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fair enough. What do you think he hangs up the gloves in? Cal?
I think I saw. Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, Cal. He sort of suggesting maybe he's going to sort of hit the drawing board and assess his future. So
he made $2 million last night, Brook. So that's pretty decent retirement money. It's a pretty good chunk of change to hanging up on. It felt like his retirement fight, didn't it? It felt like he was chasing one last big payday by going for Crawford, by traveling to Vegas, by cutting back to 147 pounds. It just smacked of, look, I know there's not much left for me. I've fucked off Eddie. The light middle, I could go to light middleweight, but all the light middle, it's Jamel Charlo who's got 3 of the belts now, I believe. Jeez. And they're the difference between the welterweights, the big welterweights, and the big light middleweights is fucking mad. Like, these guys at light middleweight are huge. Brook is a massive welterweight. Like, he was probably like 160, 165 last night in the ring with Crawford, but he's then going to go into a guy like Jamel Charlo. I don't think he'd last 3 rounds with Jamel Charlo. These guys are like fucking light heavyweights when they get in the ring.
It's kind of what's he chasing? What's he chasing? Like what's left? If you want to go up a division, it gets much more dangerous. The threats are there. He got stopped quite badly yesterday. From when that punch was landed, it was a great shot as well. Actually, essentially, as soon as he went southpaw, as soon as Crawford went southpaw, the fight was over. He was completely nullified. And as soon as he's hit, within that first punch, which it wasn't like he was knocked Sparko. I don't even think he was dropped. He was just stopped on his feet. He got a standing 8. And you just saw, if it was good stoppage from the ref. It was never going to work. So what happens if he goes up against people that are hit harder? His eye socket, you're worried that his eye is going to go every single time. He started reddening up as well already in that fight. So I think it'd be better if he's just what's left to do. He's good. Everybody will remember him fondly. He was a good world champion. He beat Sean Porter. That's great. Just knock it on the head.
Yeah, he should hang it up.
Cal, do you know how many boxers we retire on this podcast?
We do it all the time.
Every week we're retiring boxers.
T was retiring Del Boy a couple of weeks ago, wasn't he?
Get out!
Get out!
Who else? We've retired Lomachenko as well.
Lomachenko. Yeah, he did. That was T as well.
Yeah, he's retired. Just retiring boxers everywhere.
Just retiring everyone, left and right. Brooks had a good career. Fair play to him. I think Eddie would never say this, but I think he was one of those guys that helped push kind of the pay-per-view boom along. Obviously, there was AJ and Carl Froch, but
Kell Brook was massive.
Kell Brook was a big part of that as well.
Yeah, as far as Eddie Hearn's rise, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, he was one of the first big signings. Eddie Hearn. I've not read his book, Scott. Have you read his book? What's Eddie's book like?
I haven't read his book. No, I have got a copy. Flick through. Interestingly, no pictures in the book. I quite like a good picture in the middle.
Yeah, Scott, colouring in.
Scott, 2 things. One, could you really spend like 20 hours it's going to take you to read that book, given that you spend all day with him? Secondly, are you going to be fuming if you don't get mentioned?
You know what? It's weird. I don't really watch a lot of other boxing, so to get into Eddie's book. To be fair, though, I could have done with it in this hotel. I should have brought it in with me. It would have given me something to do. I do kind of cut myself off a little bit. There was obviously a Warren show the other night that I watched, and to be fair, I don't really watch a lot of other boxing just because so caught up in it 24/7. At work, I'm watching boxing. Don't get me wrong, I do watch the fights, but sort of away from the job and in my own time, I kind of want to do other things. And obviously, we share a love of the same football team, so there is other outside interests. The second answer to your question, I kind of hope I'm mentioned at some point. If not, maybe I'll get in the next one.
How long have you worked for him? For Matchroom?
4 years coming up to
4 years
in February. So yeah, it's been a So it's been an interesting couple of years, to be fair. You know, even to see the sport grow in that sort of space of time.
Have you ever met any boxers you've got starstruck by?
I think the only time I was like, "Fuck!" I made a cup of tea for Sugar Ray Leonard I was in Anthony Joshua's dressing room for when he boxed Takam in Cardiff. That was pretty cool.
So talk us through this. How did you end up making a cup of tea? Would it typically making a cup of tea be within your job remit, or is it just a case of just being able to spend some time with the legend?
Also, how does Sugar Ray Leonard take his tea?
Yes.
Is he milking first or milking last?
It was all of the above, really, I suppose.
6 sugars.
Yeah. We sort of chip in where we need to be fair. We're quite a small team. People are quite surprised when they find out how many sort of bodies are on the ground running things at Matchroom. So look, if I have to make a cup of tea for Sugar Ray Leonard, I'll get my hands dirty and do it. To be fair, we joked actually. I gave him the cup of tea. I said, Ray, I've got one sort of in exchange for this cup of tea. Do you mind if I have a picture? And he said, sir, if it's a good cup of tea, I'll take a picture. If not, you can get the fuck out. A little sip of tea, and then he said, "Go on, get your camera out." So
Lovely.
Yeah, to be fair, that's probably the only time I was. Sorry, that's probably work there.
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Do you need to take that?
That is actually a work thing. Yeah, it's never ending. Sunday at midday, and we're getting press releases out.
Scott, do you need to go?
No, that's fine, mate. No.
All right, okay.
All right, we'll quickly wrap up in a second anyway.
Cool.
We were talking about pound for pound. Let's talk about the real pound for pound king. We've been talking about Crawford, Lomachenko, and all these bums. Let's talk about the real pound for pound king, Canelo Alvarez.
Oh yes,
free agent now. How close are we to a Callum Smith fight, Scott?
I don't really know, to be fair. We've been here before with Callum, with other boxers, so it's not that I don't, I'm withholding any information. I don't really know, to be fair. I think where we've been so busy this week, I haven't really caught up with the relevant parties. I mean, I'd like to think that Callum's going to get the nod. I mean, it sounds like it from what you read online, and that's sort of what I'm going off. I think to be fair to Canelo, he wants to test himself. So fingers crossed it is the one that gets over the line. Callum seems to have been waiting for almost I say a career-defining fight. It's probably the wrong word, but he's been waiting for this next big one since he probably won the world title, to be fair. So I think he's long overdue, and I think he gets up himself for the bigger fights. And maybe you've seen in one or two of his recent performances, maybe he's dipped a little bit. Maybe just because he hasn't been able to get his teeth into it. I don't know.
If all boxers do that, though. I mean, you can't. I don't think anyone's going to look at the John Ryder fight and think he's lost it. You look at when he smashed George Groves, and albeit he was gigantic compared to Groves, John Ryder wasn't that much bigger than George Groves would have been. So it's like of course it's the level you fight at. And this, he'll be so up for it, so switched on, so well drilled. He's always fit anyway, and he's going to lose.
Yeah, I think he's going to lose. Yeah, I think, but it's like you said, Scott. It's long overdue. Since he beat George Groves, and I remember recording with Alex and saying hopefully he can take this mantle. He's number one super middleweight in the world. Hopefully he can now take this mantle and go and make the next fights. And then he had a kid and COVID, and it's just everything's just held him back. But I was quite interested in Canelo fighting Caleb Plant. Billy Joe Saunders is obviously fighting Martin Murray. So Callum Smith is obviously next in line, and I think it's probably the best matchup of the three. Really, I'd expect Canelo to win.
Good fight.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody? A lot. I think it was Tony Bellew. Obviously, fair play to Tony Bellew. Gets a lot of stick. He will, and I listened again. I get a lot of my boxing info from listening to Tristics, and I really enjoy that podcast. He did a pod with Tony Bellew, and he just said, "Look, I don't care. I don't care what the truth is. I'll always back my man. I don't. How can you not? I've always going to back my man." So he just said Callum Smith could do him. He could do him, and it does mean how much do you take Tony Bellew's opinion as something that help form your own? Maybe not, but I do love that kind of undying loyalty. And he one of the things he did say was that Callum Smith on fight night will probably be the bigger man than Canelo Alvarez, but he's just beaten Kovalev at 175. So
yeah, look, I'm with Belly. You know, I'd back Callum as well. But maybe that is sort of, you know, impartial sort of loyalty to our man. But like you say, the size factor, it can't be overlooked. But at the same time, can't be overlooked that it's Canelo Alvarez. So I guess that's what makes it, you know, interesting fight. And like you say, Cal, I think out of the three, I think that's the fight as a fan I'd like to see, to be fair. So it should be a cracker, to be fair. I think it could be very explosive. Both men will certainly come to fight. And yeah, it'll be, you know, it's a tall order. You know, let's not kid ourselves. But, you know, Callum's unbeaten. Let's see what we can do.
Canelo owns he's got WBA at super middle.
He's got the regular belt. Right. And Callum's the super champion.
Right. And then you got Callum. Sorry, go on.
I was just thinking, I wonder if there's a possibility that the WBC could throw their belt in, because they said Canelo could fight for it. Callum is the diamond champion.
Correct. Callum's been representing the WBC for probably about 6 or 7 years now. I think he's won the international belt, he's won the silver belt, and more recently the diamond belt, like you say. So, I would say that is a possibility. They obviously done it with Lomachenko and Campbell, didn't they? They just basically put the belt on the line. I think Canelo was installed to fight, was it Yildirim for the vacant title?
Thank you, yes.
Maybe they could do something where they say, look, WBC belt's on the line, the winner must fight Yildirim. I guess that way all parties would be satisfied with the outcome. So, yeah, it's a good shout, Cal. I could see that, to be fair.
It makes sense. It makes sense because it's the WBC belt is kind of just sitting there right now. And like you said, Callum Smith, he jumped through every hoop possible to get a WBC world title fight. I think Anthony Durrell, he was supposed to fight Anthony? Yes, I'm going to say Anthony. He was supposed to fight Anthony Durrell for that belt, and it just never really happened. So hopefully they throw that in as well. That would make absolute sense. We'll leave you now, Scott. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. No, it's always good to catch up. To be fair, I say thanks for giving me an hour of just entertainment. To be fair, it's, not really a lot going on. Sort of calm before the next storm, really. So no, good to catch up. Give me a shout anytime you fancy a chat.
All right, we'll talk next Sunday then, Scott. I really appreciate the offer there, mate. That was so nice. That was so nice. Get Connor with you, and we'll have a nice little chat. Nice cup of tea. All right, thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Cheers, mate.
No.
What, are we still going?
I'm here. Scott's gone.
All right.
I'm here.
Right. That was really good, wasn't it? It was interesting.
That was good. I didn't, because I wasn't recording, I couldn't see the time. So
that's fine.
How long is it?
That's fine. I've just got a couple of things I want to say, really. Okay. 58 minutes.
Okay.
What that? So what happens to his light heavyweight belt now, right?
So
he give it up, or is he going to campaign at super? He's got a campaign at super middle now, right?
He'll stay at super middle's the right division for him, really. He can't make middleweight no more. Light heavyweights, you know, he could fight Beterbiev, and I wouldn't rule him out fighting Beterbiev, really. Beterbiev's 34, 35, so I wouldn't rule that out. And I think he's going to super middle is the right division for him right now. He's made himself a free agent. He's left Golden Boy. He's made himself a free agent. And now he can fight anyone he wants. He could go to fight Caleb Plant with the PBC. He could fight Billy Joe Saunders if he's done fighting fucking Mike Murray. He can fight Callum Smith. He can fight anyone he likes now because he's just thought, fuck Golden Boy. I don't want to be promoted by them anymore. I'm the biggest name in the sport. I don't need a fucking Tim Pop promoter like that. So I'm just going to fight whoever I like, which is right. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
you know, that's what you're supposed to do. And it's the same with Crawford.
Yes, and to be fair, also, you look at Kell Brook. You've got to give him props for just trying to climb the mountain. Even though he was never going to do it, you know, he did fight everybody, and Amir Khan as well. You got to give him props for getting in the ring with Canelo and bracking himself, even though they, you know, ultimately both got splattered.
Yeah,
but such is the way. All right, just one more thing I want to ask you, which is a bit more flippant. Two more things. Okay. This is the 86th episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
1986, Mike Tyson made history on November 22nd as the youngest ever heavyweight champion.
Was it 1986?
Yep.
Wowzers.
What do you think?
Yeah, go on. What's the question? Sorry.
What do you think of that fight again? Ben and Tyson and what's his face? Who's he fighting?
In what? Roy Jones?
Yeah. It's bad, isn't it?
I don't. Yeah, I thought he was going to ask me about. Yeah, I thought he was going to ask me about the 1986 fight.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, if he wants to fight fucking Roy Jones, let him fight Roy Jones. It's a bit silly, really, but let them. They want to fight. I don't mind it. I don't think it's a bit dangerous, but that you were saying earlier about Khan and Brook, and it's like, do you know what? If two shot fighters want to fight each other, crack on. There was you'll remember years ago, Eurocus Gamboa against. There was always talking about matching Gamboa with Juan Manuel Lopez,
right?
And they were always talking about them two fighting. They never did
because
Lopez ended up getting stopped by Salido.
Yeah.
But now Gamboa's just lost to your man Devin Haney last week.
Yeah.
And I want to see them two fight. Fuck it. Let two shot fighters fight each other. Let them have a payday. Fucking crack on.
Yeah.
Tick the box.
And finally, Bob Arum. He's revealed his Mount Rushmore of boxing. Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Hagler, and Pacquiao. No room for Mayweather there.
Yeah, that was kind of odd, really. Like in terms of like a Mount Rushmore, to have Foreman, it's like, what? No Sugar Ray Robinson, no Jack Johnson.
Hagler was odd as well, I thought.
Hagler's really odd because, like, Hagler was he's probably the greatest middleweight of all time, but he made his name off fighting welters, like beating Tommy Hearns, who was a welter, fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, who was a welter. He was a great middleweight. Don't get me wrong. I don't want people coming for me and saying I'm talking bad about Hagler, but he's a great fighter, and he's, like I said, one of the best middleweights ever, but he's not a Mount Rushmore. You're talking Jack Johnson, Sugar Ray Robinson, Floyd Mayweather Jr. twice. You'd have Pretty Boy Floyd on one side and then Money Mayweather on the other side, and then Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson in the middle.
What was I going to say? Final thing. It's gone, mate. It's absolutely gone. Oh yeah. I was reading Box Rec forums the other day, and they said if you had a US versus like a Ryder Cup of the boxing world, and on the left hand side you got all the US fighters, one from each division, and on the right all the UK fighters. Who would you pick? So obviously, and who would come over the best team? I think ultimately the USA came away with most of the victories. But the one that surprised me, almost everyone gave Lewis to beat Ali.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If you start with a heavyweight, I think the way to do it is to do the 8 classic divisions.
Yes.
So the original divisions, not super fly and super middleweight, all that. Just have the classic.
I think they did have 8 actually.
Right. So like the heavyweight, light heavyweight, middle. That makes sense to do it like that. Oh, see. Yeah, that like our best chance of getting points on the board is probably Lennox Lewis.
What? What is Muhammad Ali the greatest ever or not?
Like he is the great. Yeah, he is. But this isn't about who's got the best legacy, who's the greatest. This is about who wins a one-on-one matchup. And you've got Lennox Lewis, 6'5", massive puncher, decent chin, great jab, and then you've got Muhammad Ali, who's fast feet, great chin, great engine, decent pop, not amazing pop, but decent pop. Like you'd probably pick Ali, but Lennox Lewis is a bad man. He's probably a top 5 heavyweight of all time. He's gonna give Ali a hell of a fight. Do you think that
Lennox Lewis would have been better than anyone Ali fought? It's hard. You remember those fighters because they've been eulogized so many times, didn't they?
Yeah.
Kind of
I think he would smash up Joe Frazier. He's just too big. I think he'd smash up Joe Frazier even in his prime. I think he would. George Foreman. I think George Foreman would probably stop him. To be honest, I think Foreman would probably stop Lennox Lewis. But that's a good concept. That is a good concept.
Maybe we'd do it.
Yeah,
maybe we'd do it.
Yeah. Have to write some stuff down. Okay, I like it.
All right.
I like it.
Have a good day, Kell.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.